Before I start, I want to say shouts out to Sky Jackson, and she has a new season of Bunk coming out. The third season. So everybody check that out on Disney Channel. You know what I'm saying? So she gonna be doing her thing. That's like her last season, but she on another show doing that thing. Um, so y'all know where I'm going at with this story, right? So I get married tomorrow, but I'm always a busy man. I mean, I didn't become a trillionaire just not doing anything with my life. I had to make a lot of major moves. And right now, I'm into movies and playing in movies and starring in movies and doing a whole lot of other shit. But I'm a father as well. And I'm going to be a father to Selena Gomez, baby that's in her stomach, and also Demi Lovato. So, I mean, whether people want to believe it or not, that's what it is. But I'm getting off topic. So I had to leave my daughter with Selena Gomez and her mother because I had to fly out to have a meeting about doing another movie. And it was with Sky Jackson. So I'm starring with Sky Jackson in a film, and it's a love story, and it's like a comedy love story, and it comes out, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. So we will have to start filming right after I'm done filming this movie, and I'm actually gonna be working on two movies. So I'll be working on Supermodel and also this other movie that I really can't talk. Like I really can't say the title yet because they bouncing with the title, but they already have the scripts and all that stuff like that. But the titles, they kind of working with it. They don't know if they want to choose the first title or the second title. So I'm not going to say the name, and it's not really the name. So let's get into the story. So all I remember is like, I'm looking at my daughter, and she got her eyes open, and my daughter looks exactly like me. She's my fucking twin. Like she looks just like me. So my daughter, I'm just holding her and talking to her and playing with her, and she's sticking her little tongue out like babies do. And I didn't really want to leave my daughter, but I didn't want to leave Selena either. And I thought if I left Selena by herself, she was gonna do sneaky shit, but she wasn't really doing anything. So all I remember is I flew out to the meeting, and Scott Jackson, she was like sitting, in the office, and she was by herself. I thought she was gonna be with her mother, so she was by herself, and obviously her mother might have dropped her off, and like, the funny thing about it, Scott Jackson is whipping. She's driving, so I guess she drove there by herself. So she was like really doing it. So she was sitting in the room, and we were like, going over the script, and they was like, they introduced me, and they was like, this is David Sims. This is the new star that's going to fuck up, and they actually cussed too. They was like, that's going to fuck up all TV screens, all movie screens, everything combined. This man is going to do it. His name is David Sims, the one and only David Sims. So I walked in, and she's looking at me. She had a little bit of her friends, and I had a couple of my soldiers with me, and they was like standing over me and stuff. So Sky was automatically like checking that shit out. She was checking it out. I seen her, and I'm just like, like, okay, so I mean, so she's like, what? She plays my girlfriend, or are they like, yeah, she plays your girlfriend. It's a love story. It's actually a comedy story, and it's going to be very funny, and it's going to break out, sometime next year, 2019. And I'm like, okay. They was like, we brought you here, David, because we really want to know if you're going to do this. We don't know if you're going to actually do this role. Everybody that we thought would be right for the role, they don't fit the picture. But your face and your description fit this whole role. So I'm looking over the script, and I actually like the script. So I'm like, okay, well, where do I sign at? So, they said they gave me the contracts right off top. They gave me the contracts. I haven't signed them yet, but I'm going to sign them. And like, as soon as I get off of here. So they kind of like left us in the office, and, Scott Jackson was just sitting there. And I'm like, hi, my name is David. She's like, oh, hi, I'm Sky. I'm like, so I like your TV show Bunked. So she like, oh yeah, I had fun shooting that. I'm like, so what are you doing now? She's like, well, I'm starting another show, and I'm gonna be starring in a couple of other movies coming up. But this is like the first one that we're kind of working on. It's gonna take a little time, but I love working. So I'm like, so where's your mom at? So she was like, oh, my entourage. I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, she let me come by myself, and she's let me like have a little freedom. So I'm like, so what, you caught the bus? She's like, very funny. No, I drove here. I'm like, oh, you driving? She's like, yeah. I'm like, where your car at? She's like, right there. So I'm like, oh, okay. So she's like, I love it. It's my baby. I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm like, okay. So what about the boyfriend status? You got a boyfriend? She's like, no, Mr. Nosy. No, I don't have a boyfriend. What about you? So I'm like, things are, complicated. She's like, well, what do you mean? So I'm like, I'm just trying to, make sure that girls don't break my heart. That's all. So she's like, oh, I have that same problem. Trust issues. I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I have that same problem. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so you a social media head? She like, not really. I mean, it's okay at times when you really need it, but far as like me actually like doing it like all the time, you mean like posting stuff all the time? I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I don't do that. I used to, but I don't really have time to post all the time. But I usually post stuff like what I'm doing throughout my day, or where I'm going at, or where I'm eating. Like after I'm done here, I'm probably gonna meet up with my mom or my friends, and we probably go out to eat, or probably go somewhere else. Like, like we always do stuff. So it's like, and that's when I like post stuff. Like when I really feel like it. I just got off a vacation a few weeks ago. I'm like, oh, where'd you go at? She's like, I went to Miami. I'm like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, and it was amazing. I'm like, did you like it? She's like, it was just what I needed. I'm like, really? She's like, mm-hmm. She was like, David, it was really good to like relax and just like kick your feet up, and you didn't have to worry about work, or you didn't have to worry about people telling you, well, you only got 5 minutes to do this, and then we gotta go right back to set. It was like really good to just like have a real vacation. Because a lot of times I have vacations, but they're not real vacations. They like, you go out of state, but you still got to work. So it's not really a vacation. So this one was like an actual vacation where I had to really relax and like really just kick my feet up and enjoy life. So I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, and it was for my 16th birthday. So I'm like, oh, so you just turned 16. She's like, yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, you looking all pretty. She like, I like, what type of lip gloss you got on? She like, why, you want some? I'm like, no, Sky. I mean, I probably would want some. She's like, oh, really? So I'm like, okay. I mean, you want to go out to lunch or something? She's like, sure. So we leaving now, and they like, where y'all going at? So I'm like, well, we going out to lunch. They like, what, like a date? So Sky was like, I guess. What is this? Is it a date? I'm like, yeah. So I just remember Selena calling me. She's like, David, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm taking care of the movie business. So she's like, what they say? So did you get the role? I'm like, I already had the role. They just wanted me to come out here so they can get my word that I was going to do it. So she was like, well, are you going to do the movie? And who is the star of the movie? Who is the star of the show? I'm like, I'm the star of the show. So she's like, okay, you know what I mean. Who's your co-star? Who's the girl that's going to be in the film with you? I'm like, oh, Scott Jackson. So she like, oh, Scott Jackson? That little girl? You talking about the girl that played on Bunked and Jesse? I'm like, yeah. She's like, that little black girl? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, hmm. So she's like, all right, well, hurry up back, David. And I mean, hurry. So I'm like, okay. So we eating and lunch and enjoying ourselves, and I'm just asking her a lot of questions, and she asked me a lot of questions. So I mean, I was like, "Can I get your number?" She was like, "Sure." So I got her number, and she got mine, and she was like, "Okay." So I'm like, "Why you say it like that?" She's like, "I don't know. This is seems kind of weird." Not saying that she's like not saying it in a bad way. It just seems really weird that all this is happening so fast. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I was like, I really always thought you was like really pretty. She's like, really? I have issues with that too. I'm like, what? She's like, like my looks and stuff. sometimes I don't think I'm pretty enough or I have the body enough to like, catch people's eyes. I'm like, well, you caught my eye. So she's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, really. So she's like, okay. So she's like, so if I text you, you gonna text me back or you're not gonna blow me off? I'm like, no. So I'm like, if you call me, I promise you I'll pick up. So she like, you promise? So I'm like, yeah, I promise. So she was like, okay. So I'm like, so who bought you? I'm like, so who bought you your first car? So she was like, I bought me my first car. I mean, it was my money. I mean, me working and doing TV shows and doing a whole lot of other stuff. That's what got me my first car. Like, I bought me my first car. Like, if you really want to get like really down to the nitty gritty, I'm like, oh, you say nitty gritty too? So she's like, I mean, sometimes, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so I mean, do you want a boyfriend? She's like, yes, I do want a boyfriend. I'm like, you do? She's like, yeah, I think every girl that reached the age of 16 want to experience what it feels like to have a boyfriend. So I'm like, okay, do you know Zendaya? She's like, yeah, I know Zendaya. I'm like, oh, you do? She's like, mm-hmm. I'm like, so how's Zendaya? She's like, she's really nice. She goes with that Spider-Man guy, the boy that plays on Spider-Man. I'm like, yeah, I know. I kind of figured that they went together, but she's saying that they just friends. She was like, she's only saying it because she doesn't want anybody in her business. But yeah, they boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm like, I knew they was. So she was like, I heard about some new Avenger movie coming out called Teen Ninja. I don't know who's like starring in it. I'm like, that's me. She's like, you're the one? I'm like, yeah, that's me. She's like, I heard that movie's gonna change like superhero history. I'm like, yeah, it's coming out 2019. So she's like, oh my God, I can't wait. I want to see that movie. I didn't see the trailer or nothing. When is the trailer coming out? So I'm like, well, the trailer coming out next year because it comes out next year. So she's like, yeah, right, right, right. So I'm like, yeah. So she's like, okay, so you starring in a lot of movies. I'm like, yeah, and I'm starring in another one called Supermodel. She's like, oh, what's that about? So I'm like, well, it's about a teenager in the 60s that, he was a supermodel. He was a very very big supermodel in the 60s and he like broke history with modeling. So she was like, so it's like a biopic. I'm like, yeah. So she's like, oh, I really got to see that movie. I like OD movies. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so are you best friends with Zendaya? She's like, I guess. So I'm like, you text her. She's like, well, why do you keep asking me about Zendaya? You like Zendaya? I'm like, no, I mean, I just wanted to know, like, So she's like, I mean, you keep asking me about Zendaya. You should be asking me things about me. So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking. So she's like, okay. So I'm like, when can we go back out on our date, though? She's like, whenever you want to. She's like, I heard you have a lot of money. I heard you was a trillionaire, so this shouldn't be nothing to you. So I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't be. So she's like, so when do you want to go out on our second date? I'm like, whenever you want to. So she's like, okay. So I'll call you as soon as I'm like free. I'm like, okay. She's like, I mean, but I mean, I'm not gonna say like I'm not gonna call you. I am gonna call you. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, no, for real. I'm really gonna call you. So I'm like, okay. So we hugged it out, and I was just like, yo, this girl is really pretty. She's like Scott Jackson is prettier in fucking person. So it's like. It's really crazy. I didn't think. I mean, like, not saying that she's like a huge ass celebrity, but it's a second part to this story. So I'm gonna load this up, and then I'm gonna talk to y'all about the second part of the story. So y'all get ready for the second half of the story. So yo, that shit. I mean, for a minute there, I kind of forgot that I was with Selena Gomez, y'all. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I'm gonna finish the story, y'all. So yeah, y'all get ready.